Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, to this week's Zen and Zazen class. As always, I would like to invite you to sit for half an hour with me, and then I will talk about a four-letter word from Dogen, Shu-sho-itto. But before that, let's sit together.
宝宝，你好像没声音哎。哦，我们前面还是做30分钟，然后今天我们分析就是今天下午给大家发的那个道元禅师的那个公案啊。宝宝好像没声儿。
Thank you very much for joining Zazen. Today I want to talk about a phrase from this book again, or the Taiwanese version for those of you who speak Chinese better than Japanese would be this one. It's in Japanese, it's pronounced Shu-sho-itto. That's the way I wrote it. This means practice, and this means, well, the evidence of practice, or satori, enlightenment, awakening. But it can also be translated as realization or manifestation. So basically the goal of practice and enlightenment, the goal of practice are one and the same. Shu-sho-itto.
就是无方大师刚才说的，因为网不好，所以没有脸，只有声儿。就是修正一等的意思，就是修，代表着练习、修习，然后正代表的是这个，练习的证据，也代表说是你意识到这件事情，或者是突然醒悟的这个事情。所以修正的意思就是，这个修行的目的跟这个修行的意义。然后一等的意思就是实际上它是一件事情。Yeah.
And these four letters, Shu-sho-itto, they express Dogen's answer to a question that he had when he was already very young, when he had just ordained as a monk in Japan. I think he was 12 or 14 years old when he ordained and became a monk.
就是说，我刚刚其实没有太那个在意啊，璇纠正我如果不对的话，他好像是说他是12岁还是14岁的时候，然后就变成了一个僧人，但前面我没太注意听。OK。
At the time in Japan, the Buddhists taught that we are already Buddha. We are Buddha already the way we are. So we are originally all enlightened beings. So the young Dogen asked himself, if that is the case, why do we have to practice? Why do we have to ordain as monks? Why do we have to shave our heads? Why do we put on a robe and chant the sutras? And why do we meditate and practice Zazen? What's the meaning of that? What's the reason?
然后那个禅师就说我们人人都是佛，实际上我们本身就已经是佛了。那个年轻的这个小僧就说，那这个我们的意义在哪里呢？为什么要修行呢？为什么我们要剃头？为什么要穿僧袍？为什么我们要就是静坐呢？那这个意义是在哪个地方呢？ OK。
And people say that nobody in Japan could answer that question for Dogen. So that's the reason why when he was 24, he traveled to China, and for 3 years he practiced in China, and he found a teacher there. His Japanese name, or the Japanese pronunciation of the name, is Tendo Nyojo. I think in Chinese it's something like Tian Tai Ru Jing, or close to that.
那因为这个人在那个日本没有人可以回答他这个问题，所以他在24岁的时候来到了中国，然后游历了待了3年，然后他找了一个这个老师，他这个老师是日本人，然后刚刚吴峰大师发了他的这个名字的这个音啊，但是我不太清楚应该怎么翻译它。OK。
So what did he understand finally in China? The easy explanation is we do not practice to become a Buddha in the future, but practicing Buddha and being Buddha are one and the same. So it's not that we are already Buddha, so we don't need to practice, but because we are Buddha, we practice. And because we practice, we are Buddha. You cannot separate practice from being a Buddha, or practice from the manifestation of enlightenment. These are two. So it's not that practice is a tool and enlightenment is a goal that's separate from that, but it's one and the same.
然后他终于在中国找到了这个答案。简单一点来说呢，就是我们并不是为了修行成为佛，就是在将来，我们并不是为了在将来成为佛，而是因为我们已经是佛了，所以说我们要修行要练习，这是实际上是一件事情，是因为我们是佛，所以我们练习。不要把练习或者是修行当成一种工具，然后你的目的就是成为佛，这是把他们两个分开成为两件事情，但实际上这是一件事情，就是成为佛的时候你就在修行。Yeah, I finish.
And for those of you who are more familiar with Christianity rather than Buddhism, I'm a little bit reminded here of something that Jesus says in the New Testament. I think it's Luke 17:20, where somebody asks Jesus, "Where's the kingdom of God? When will the kingdom of God arrive?" And Jesus answers, "The kingdom of God is not something that will be here or there. It's not something you point to and, there it is, no, here it is. But the kingdom of God is in your midst. You already have it. You already carry it in you."
然后武方大师说，有些人可能对这个就是耶稣基督更熟悉，相对于佛教而言，这个是在这个新约里面的17章第20篇，他说到就是有人问，就是这个神的这个领域，神的这个王国到底在哪个地方呢？实际上神的这个就是净土吧，它不是在这里或者是那个地方，它其实就已经是在你心里了，就是在你的这个就是在你里面了，其实在你里面。Okay.
The question, of course, is if the kingdom of God, or enlightenment, or nirvana, whatever you want to call it, if it's already in us, in our midst, why don't we see it? Why don't we feel it? And the answer, of course, is because we don't practice it. We need to practice it to manifest. Only when we practice, it will manifest.
然后就说为什么有人说，那既然说它在我们本身的这个里面，那为什么我们看不见它呢？然后这个地方的回答就是说，我们只有通过修行跟练习才能够看到它，只有通过这件事情。Okay.
To illustrate this point, Dogen, in a chapter of the Shobo Genzo, which is called Genjo Koan, he uses an old Chinese koan, an old story from China. And the story goes as follows. One time there was a Chinese Zen master who, in the middle of summer, he fanned himself. And one of his students approached him and he would say, "Master, why do you fan yourself? The air is everywhere. You don't have to fan yourself. You're already surrounded by air."
然后下面说到一个中国非常古老的故事，就是有一个这个道教的大师，他在夏天的时候正在扇风，然后他的徒弟就说，大师你为什么要扇风呢？这个空气无处不在，它就是在我们周围环绕着我们呀。Okay.
This question doesn't really seem to make sense. But I think what the monk wants to ask is, if Buddha nature is like the air, there's no reason for us to practice. We're already in the midst of Buddha nature. Why would we have to practice? I think that's the point of the question. And the teacher, when he heard the question, he said, obviously you understand about the nature of the air. You understand that the air is everywhere. But it seems that you don't understand the wind.
然后就是，单看他刚才问的这个问题啊，就是你为什么要扇风，空气哪里都在，其实完全不，就是完全这个问题就是不是一个问题。那他实际上真正想问的就是说，如果说修行成为佛，就像空气一样，那我们本来就是佛了，那为什么还要去修行呢？那这个地方就完全没有意义去修炼或者是去练习这件事情。那这个大师他就说呢，他说你很明显你已经明白了这个空气的这个原理，他说但你一点点都不了解风。OK，
And then the student asks, please, master, teach me about the nature of the wind. And the master just did this. The master would just
呃，
continue to fan.
然后呢，学生就说，哦，那大师你赶紧教教我，那什么才是这个风的这个自然的这个真理呢？然后大师什么都没说，他就一直在扇扇子，就像现在无方大师做的，就一直扇。Yep，
So in this koan, the wind stands for the manifestation of enlightenment or nirvana or maybe the kingdom of God. It's always here, but you need to practice, you need to manifest it, you have to fan so that it appears. And what is important for our practice, sometimes we think that, well, if I fan a lot now, then maybe I will feel a strong wind tomorrow or maybe next year. But that's not the case. In this moment, when you practice, inside that practice, enlightenment manifests. And of course, practice doesn't only mean to sit in Zazen, but also to live as a bodhisattva is an expression of enlightenment. The moment you do it, enlightenment manifests. The moment you practice as a bodhisattva, it appears here and now.
就是其实在这个故事里面，风就代表了这个神的那一个净土，代表了佛，代表了这个顿悟。那我们只有通过不断的练习跟修行，才能够到达，就是enlightenment，它其实是照明的意思。我想他可能说的是这种顿悟，就是能够悟出来。只有通过我们在进行练习的这件事情当中，这个事情才会被发生。Yeah.
Maybe one small thing I would like to add, like in Europe, usually we don't use this kind of fan. I didn't use it before I came to Japan, and the first couple of times I use it, I thought it's actually quite, how do you say, tiring. You always have to move your hand, and if it's hot already, and you always have to move, you become even hotter. Of course, if you fan yourself, your face gets cool, but your arm after a while gets tired. But I saw that some of the monks in a monastery in Kyoto in the summer, it was very hot. And we had some time in the afternoon to take a nap. I was surprised that they could sleep, and even in their sleep, their hand would continue to move. So they didn't have to make an effort, but actually their hand was almost moving by itself. Or you could say, of course, it doesn't really make sense in the physical sense, but you could say as a metaphor, it's not that the hand that moves and makes the wind, but you could say that it's the wind that moves the hand. And I think that's even more true for our practice. We might think when I practice, I manifest enlightenment, but actually, maybe it's the other way around. It's enlightenment that pushes our backs and allows us to practice.
Uh, 无方大 然后他之前一直弄不懂，就他已经很热，真的，然后他说，哪怕你扇的时候，你觉得你的脸很凉爽，但是你的手会累啊，然后你身上会觉得热啊。他说他觉得就是不能理解，他说但是后来发现。有一些就是僧人在睡觉的时候，他们的这个手也可以不停的扇风，就是人已经睡着了，然后他手还可以不停的动。他说那这是怎么可能会发生的呢？就是在物理的世界里，这感觉是不应该会发生的事情。但你可以把它想深一点，你会想到底是这个手在扇动这个风，还是风在带动的手在这个动呢？他说实际上在这个过程之中，可能这个真理还是什么佛性已经显现出来了。Yep.
Yeah, so I want to stop my explanation here. We still have time, so if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask whatever you would like to ask, or if there's something you just want to share, please share.
问问题时间，或者是你有什么想跟大家分享的，都可以说一下。
Aiko, you're raising your hand, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I don't understand the practice.
You don't understand the
I
practice?
don't understand. Yes, I don't understand what to manifest.
What to manifest?
It is a mystery. I mean, I don't understand it. I just sit. I sit not because I want to be enlightened, but because at this moment in time, I am just sitting. And it's not about reaching a place.
Yes.
But when it is about the manifestation of the kingdom of God or the Buddha nature, I don't understand how to do this.
Well, what I try to
that's
see
all.
with this, the hand moves naturally. Maybe it's less something that you have to manifest, so it's not something extra that you add to reality, but it's rather that you stop adding something to reality. That's why I always say kind of quitting the game. We're always playing a game inside reality. And that's why we can't see the kingdom of God or nirvana or however you want to call it. So it's not that you're in this samsara reality and then you add something and then you have Buddha nature, but it's rather that you stop playing the game, you stop making this extra effort, and that's what allows reality to appear without that kind of game that we are making out of it. So I think that when Dogen went to China originally, he was still playing that game. He said, well, how long do I have to practice until I become a Buddha? Or if it's true that I'm a Buddha already, then why would I practice in the first place? But even then, he was already looking for an excuse to not do anything. So practice being the manifestation of enlightenment doesn't mean that by practicing hard you produce something, but rather, well, how should I say, you let go of this idea, I have to manifest something.
Okay, can I translate first? OK，刚刚那个 刚刚那个男生问的问题就是说，他其实不明白这个练习或者是修行是什么意思。他说他到底要显现出来一个什么东西呢？这个东西对他来说太神秘了，他搞不懂。他说我就只是坐在那个地方，我并不是说要到什么地方去。然后悟方大师说，所谓的这个，就比如说神的这个什么净土国度啊，然后这个比如说佛的这个佛的自然呢。它实际上这些东西就是在说，我们不要在现实，就是添加任何额外的东西到现实中，不要想着说我们要非常努力的去修行来达到一个什么的目的，就好像当时刚刚故事的开头那个一直寻找答案来到中国的这个大师也是，他刚刚来的时候，他可能想哦，我还需要多长时间才能变成佛？那我已经是佛了，为什么我还要去练习呢？他实际上他还是在这个就是世俗的这个游戏里面，而你真正应该做的修行，实际上是放下所有的这个，不要有执念，就是不要想着说我要是去花更多的力气去来做成一件事情，或者是来产生一些事情，然后达到这个目的。你所要做的就是全部放手，然后让它发生。Yep.
Joseph and Chiak-san are raising their hands. Maybe Joseph first, please.
Hello.
Hello.
First of all, apologies on behalf of Dad, who's just had to leave. Second, you did get the Bible verse right. It's Luke 17:21. I just looked it up. And then my question. This is something that's actually been on my mind for a few weeks, and what you were saying today brought it up, so it seemed like a good opportunity to ask it. And that is about labeling your thoughts during meditation. Because of course we've all heard that thing about, you are a Buddha already, but then sometimes you can also hear this advice to watch your thoughts and to ascribe to notice them, that there's fear, there's greed, there's anger or whatever, and it always seems to be in a very sort of negative sense that we label them. And on the one hand, it's quite an effective technique, I find, for recognizing when my mind has gone off on a train of thought during meditation. But as I said, it can have this very judgmental or harsh feeling to it sometimes. So I was just wondering, do you have advice on, do you think that's a good tactic to use during your practice? That's my question.
I'm not quite sure if I got the question right, but most of us are, well, probably in the beginning surprised how many thoughts we have during Zazen. We think we are supposed to have a quiet mind, remove these thoughts as good as possible, but they keep popping up one after the other. And often we make the mistake, I don't know if I should call it a mistake, but we think, well, I should rather not have thoughts, but I have them, so my practice is not so good. But actually that's not the case. I don't know how it's with you, but a lot of people feel that they have during Zazen even more thoughts than usual. Usually they're not so bothered by their thoughts, but when they sit, they come non-stop. But is it really true that we have more thoughts during Zazen, or is it because our mind is sharper that we realize more clearly how many thoughts there are and to what extent we are, well, how do you say, governed by these thoughts? I would say probably the latter is the case. In Zazen, your mind settles down, you're more clear, and that's why you realize how many thoughts you have. So when you realize, oh, another thought and another thought and another thought, I try to let them go, but they keep popping up. It's not a sign that your Zazen is bad. It's a sign that your Zazen is mature. You're realizing how many thoughts you have. Sometimes when you have a class, Zen class, and you ask participants afterwards, did you have lots of thoughts? There's maybe one or two that say, I didn't have any thoughts. My mind was completely still. But usually that's the guys who were moving all over the place, and you would say, well, that cannot be true. Cannot be true. You didn't look like somebody who didn't have thoughts. Of course, I cannot read their mind, but even just from the expression on their face, I can tell you must have had thoughts. But they tell me I didn't have any thoughts. So if you have lots of thoughts during the Zen, it's a good sign. It's a sign that your mind is sharp and clear, because otherwise you wouldn't realize how many thoughts you have. So you don't have to label it as something bad. You have thoughts, and well, you try as good as possible not to let yourself be carried away by these thoughts. Sometimes it works that you just observe the thoughts, how they come and go. Sometimes you jump on the thoughts, and before you realize it, you're carried away by it. But even that, after 3 minutes, after 5 minutes, probably you realize, oh, I allowed myself to be carried away by these thoughts. And that's a wonderful thing that you realize it, even if it took you 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or maybe it sometimes takes you 10 minutes. But isn't it wonderful that almost like, well, manifestation of enlightenment, you realize it out of nothing. I was thinking. So don't feel bad. For 10 minutes I was thinking, oh my God, how can I get these 10 minutes back? Well, you can't get them back, but you realized you were thinking. And that moment you already returned to reality.
好，刚刚这位同学他的问题就是，首先他肯定了啊，这个是17章21节的这个圣经里面提到了这个东西。然后有一个事情呢，有一个想法困扰了他好几周，正好他觉得今天是个很好的契机，他就分享出来。他说他在这个冥想的时候，就是打坐静坐的时候呢，就会发现很多这个想法呀和感受都会涌出来，然后他就试着给他们贴标签，比如说我这个是非常不好的想法，或者是就这个是非常生气的想法，那还会有很多这个就是自我评价非常就是可能比较激进的想法。他就问无方大师有没有什么这个技术来克服这个问题。在这个静坐的时候，无方大师说呢，实际上你会发现就是好像说是你在练习这个静坐的时候会有更多的想法跳出来，就是比平时你可能还没有那么多想法，但是在你静坐的时候，这个更多的想法更多的感受会跳出来，比平时更多。他说那到底是这个是正确的一种解读，还是更正确的一种解读是当你在静坐的时候，你的这个大脑是慢慢安静下来，然后你意识到了这些的想法就是好像在你脑袋的后台在运作，实际上是因为你更清晰的意识到了你的这些想法，然后全部涌动了出来。它其实给你的这个信号不是说你的这一段静坐是一个不好的经历，恰恰相反，它表示它给你带来的是因为你意识到了更多的东西，所以表示说你静坐的这个能力更加娴熟更加成熟了。然后经常他说参加这个静坐的结束的时候，会有1、2个人就告诉他在这个静坐的这个过程当中我完全没有想法，就是根本就没有什么乱的思绪跳出来。他说但是搞笑的是，这些回答自己没有想法的人往往都是在静坐的这个时候到处就是动手动脚，然后坐立不安的人。他说实际上虽然我不能够知道他们在想什么，但是从他们的这个脸部表情我就会知道他们实际上是有很多想法的。他说总结出来呢，就是所以说如果你有很多想法不用去给他们贴标签说这个是好这个不好，他们仅仅就是想法而已。然后你所做的呢，就是不要让他们把你带跑，然后就是静静的观察他们。他说哪怕你被他们带跑了3分钟5分钟或者10分钟都没有关系，只有在这个3分钟5分钟10分钟之后，如果你意识到了自己被他们带跑了，然后把自己的注意力拉回到现实中，拉回到你在静坐的这件事情，这就是一个非常非常棒的一个静坐的体验。
Thank you. Chiaki raised her hand next. Chiaki, please.
Is it okay? The time is over.
Oh, it's okay
It's
for me.
already.
I hope
okay.
it's okay for you.
Yes, it's okay for me. Thank you. I try to express my thought as good as possible, but I'm not confident about it. But I can only metaphorically say something to the enlightenment you talked about before. I don't understand enlightenment either, but Moho, you talked about one of the deep suffering of human beings is that feeling lacking something. And actually, for example, I feel something is lacking. Actually, there is already, but I don't see it. Metaphorically see, maybe I describe myself as a light, but as a light, I don't see me as a light. And I'm longing to a beautiful light, and I go to the concert, spectacular lights I see there, and I get excited, and I get pleased, and I get happy. Artificial, but that's the metaphorically people searching that kind of light. But at the moment, in that moment, I get content, but there's something outside that's not in me. So after a while, that feeling get lost, and I search again. I go to another concert or another excitement I choose. But in midst of the kind of looking forward outside or excitement, there's no chance to realize actually my own light to see. So I think the longing I had, I don't see what I am, what I am. So in sitting Zazen, it's not the goal, but without being that silence, I couldn't see my light. And as I said, I saw such a dark, deep darkness in me, but it's piled up until now, what I got in my life. So I don't know, I express understandably enough, but this lacking part of me is actually there to see that maybe we practice. I like to say. Thank you.
Yeah, often we don't see it in ourselves, we see it in others, but hopefully others can see it in us. Diane, please.
Thank you, Muho. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going back to the thought that of what Joseph had said on manifestation. And this is all so esoteric to me. And I even almost feel uncomfortable talking because I'm going to maybe sound like I'm completely off the track. But there's two thoughts I had. First of all, the explanation of the wind says to me that the mere action of sitting is the manifestation. The mere just letting go and having no expectation, no anticipation of anything is the manifestation. And the other thing is that I feel like I am always feeling something. My entire day, whatever it is that I'm doing about everyone or my family or my, you know, all the different things that are happening, sometimes extraordinarily overwhelming, sometimes happy, all of that. I want to let go of all of those feelings. I want to feel nothing, almost to give myself a break. And then hopefully to clear my mind so that I can actually see life and clearer, not in extremes, not emotionally, not overreactive, letting go of that. And I know that I often say, you know, because I lean towards the Christianity, so those examples are helpful to me. Is there a God? Is there, you know, does this really exist? Do I have a faith that really is believing in something that is real? But I do think that, again, for me, sitting is now, from your explanation, saying, yes, there is. It is nirvana is possible. It is there just by sitting. And also, the other example would be is there a God? Well, you know, just by going to church, just go. Do not worry about what am I getting from it. Just do it. So I don't know if I'm on track, off track, but thank you. Thank you for these explanations.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. What you said about the thoughts and feelings that occur in the mind, I think it was also what Joseph was saying, and maybe Chiaki-san was saying something similar when she was talking about the light. But the stronger the light is, the clearer you see the shadows. The only thing you see is shadows, but that doesn't mean there's no light, but the other way around, because, well, you could also use the word God or whatever. God shines on you, but you don't see the light, you see the shadow. But that's not a bad thing. We might think, I would rather see the light than the shadow, but the shadow is just the other side of the light. But yeah, I don't know your name, but Mr. iPhone is raising his hands. That's what's hanging here. Like a dragon diving into the water, like a tiger in the mountains, roaming in the mountains. Thank you. That looks perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. That's great. Xuan, our host, is raising her hand.
Yeah. There's a light at top of my head shining.
Yeah. You can't see it, but we can see it.
Yeah. The practice and we say enlightenment is the same, but enlightenment means peace or no thought, just stay still. Can you hear me?
Yes,
but sometimes when we start to practice, you get more confusing. Your mind start to move more. You feel more difficult than when you didn't practice. So I feel that's like, as you practice, you feel, oh, I don't know anything. I get more confusing. Why I have to practice? I wanted to have a calm mind. I wanted to peace, but as when I practice, all those problems arise, all those problems come out. That's my question. That's my problem. I think maybe all the people feel that, like even when we do yoga, as you practice, you feel more difficult, and your body get more flexible, your technique get more better, but as you get better, you feel more difficult sometimes.
I think that's also a common experience. Like, for example, in this book, there's this one phrase here that basically exemplifies this. This is the character for, well, illusion or being lost somewhere. In Japanese you say mayoi or mei, being lost. And inside being lost, you get even more lost. We feel lost. We think we don't know where we really belong, so we start with the practice, but what happens is often that we feel even more lost. We realize that the confusion is even bigger than we thought it is. The chaos gets even bigger. But I wouldn't be so worried about that, because, well, if the light gets clearer, the shadow gets darker. And the clearer you see, the more you realize how much chaos is inside you and outside you. And in the beginning, when you're kind of, how do you say, your mind is cloudy, you think, oh, I'm doing fine. But when the mind clears up, you realize the amount, the extent of the confusion, I think.
Yeah, I think that's why we have to keep practicing. You're not just practice today, tomorrow, not only Monday, Zazen. You have to practice all the time.
Yes. Yeah, and don't be afraid of getting lost. Don't be afraid of getting deeper and deeper into the labyrinth. Thank you everybody for joining, also for asking questions, for sharing, and thank you for hosting us, Xuan, and thank you, Ling Shu, for translation this time. And if you like, let us see us again on next Monday, next week, same time, same place. Thank you very much. Have a nice Monday. Have a nice week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Muhu?
Yes?
Muhu, would you
Thank
mind
you.
staying behind?
Pardon?
I've got a sort of out of the way question. Could you stay just a second behind?
Yes, please.